Ann Bocock, and welcome to Between the Covers. You're in for a treat today. Chris Bohjalian is here. He is the New York Times best-selling author, if I've counted correctly, of 22 books. And that includes one of my all-time favorite novels, Midwives. He's also a playwright and a screenwriter. Several of his books have been turned into movies. As a matter of fact, The Flight Attendant is an HBO miniseries. The Red Lotus is a global thriller. It's a very timely story. We're going to get into that in a little while, but we're not stopping there. We're also going to give you a little peek into another book, and this one is a historical thriller. The title is Hour of the Witch. So please let me introduce you to an author who obviously never sleeps, Chris Bohjalian. Chris, welcome.
Ann, it's great to be with you.
I have to start with Hour of the Witch. And all right, I'm going to give a little bit, and then you'll tell me how comfortable you are giving us the rest. Hour of the Witch, we're talking Boston around 1662. There are some terrifying moments in this book, made even more terrifying because it's historical fiction. This is based in what really happened in American history. We all know the term witch hunt. We hear it all the time on the news. This was the real witch hunt in America. Tell me as much as you're comfortable with the plot.
Sure. When we think of the Puritans, we don't immediately think of women's rights. But one of the fascinating things I discovered when I was researching this book was marriage was a civil covenant for the Puritans, and there were 32 divorces among Puritans in the 17th century. There were 5 reasons why you could divorce your husband as a woman, including cruelty. So I decided to embark upon a novel about the first divorce in North America for what today we call domestic violence, 1662 Boston. But because it was Boston in 1662, it quickly deteriorates from a civil divorce trial into a criminal witch trial. Whenever we think of witch trials in America, we go right to 1692 Salem. But 30 years earlier, in 1662, 6 women were hanged as witches in Hartford, and Boston was on high alert, looking for the next presence of Satan. Because for Bostonites in 1662, Satan was a real dude. He was in the woods. He was in the first church. He was in the city.
All right, I'm going to leave it there so that everybody wants to pick up Hour of the Witch and read it. And for those of you on Facebook, go ahead and drop questions into the Q&A, and we'll see. Hopefully we can get to them. Chris, you never write the same book twice. And for instance, I'm just going to name a few things that subjects that you have written on: human trafficking, the Armenian genocide, climate change, transgender issues, mental illness, alternative medicine, foster care system. This is just a handful out of the 22. So how do you choose a particular story? Is it the issue itself, or is it the conflict and perhaps the ensuing conversation about the issue that you want?
There are a couple factors, and it's a great question. And it gets at the heart of what we do as storytellers. Usually, it's all about character, one human being. In The Red Lotus, it's one human being, an ER doctor named Alexis Remnick. In Hour of the Witch, it's one 24-year-old bride, Mary Deerfield, who is tired of the cruelty she's subjected to. Now, occasionally, that character is the window into a bigger issue. You mentioned a book that means so much to me, The Sandcastle Girls. Well, the principal character in that book is a Bostonite named Elizabeth Endicott, who ventures into the cauldron of the Armenian genocide in 1915. So that was an attempt to educate Americans, and it turned out a lot of the world, to what is arguably the 20th century's first genocide and the precursor to the Holocaust. The links between the Armenian genocide and the Holocaust are horrific and tangible. So the other part of your question is this: what inspires me to find that character? Well, every day when I'm in this room, my library, it's what excites me, what interests me. In the Red Lotus, Alexis Remnick, an ER doctor, is on a bike tour of Vietnam with her boyfriend, and he disappears. He just vanishes. And she realizes in his disappearance, she's in scary amounts of danger. Every morning I'd come to this room and I'd want to figure out her story. Why did this man vanish? How much danger is Alexis in?
Chris, let's get to the Red Lotus. Now, I know it takes a really long time to write the book, to get it edited, to get the manuscript ready, to send it out for publication. So this was in the works for a really long time. But I'm reading this book. When I read it was just at the moment that coronavirus was in the news, the pandemic was coming, we were getting ready to shut down. So this book, what do you think about the timing of this book?
The Red Lotus had its origins in April of 2018, 23 months before COVID-19 in a real way arrived in North America. I was reading the newspaper, the New York Times, and they had this article about 8 antibiotic-resistant strains of bacteria that New York City rodents carried. And one of the people quoted was a epidemiologist named Peter Daszak. So I called him up and I said, "You talk a lot about antibiotic-resistant bacteria. Tell me about pandemics." And he's brilliant. He was on 60 Minutes this summer. He's one of the smartest people I've ever interviewed. And he said, New York City in some ways is ripe for the next pandemic. It is the 3 things you need: high population density, a population that depends on mass transportation, and lots of travelers coming and going. Simultaneous with that, I had lunch with an older friend of mine who was a Vietnam veteran. We'd just seen Ken Burns's remarkable special on, yes, PBS. And I started asking him questions about his service. And they always ended with this: I never told my wife that. I never told anyone that. And I began to imagine a story about Vietnam, a New York City ER doctor, and a race against time, against a pandemic. So I said to my wife, "We've never been to Vietnam. Want to go on a bike tour?" And she said, "Sure." So we go on a bike tour of Vietnam, and I found my novel.
I knew you went on this bike tour because the descriptions of the cycling is so gorgeous. And here's this thing, there's this
Thank you.
juxtaposition of the beauty and the lush landscape of Vietnam. And then I also am reading about napalm and what happened when it was sprayed from flamethrowers during the war. You really give us a look at the impact. And we brought Agent Orange to the jungles, so we have to let that sink in. So obviously, you, as you said, you did a lot of research on pandemics and rats and microbiology. Uh, but the research you did in Vietnam, it's a beautiful country, isn't it?
It's an extraordinary country. It's a remarkable country because it is so resilient. And here's one of the great ironies to Vietnam as it relates to America. I'm going to tell you two things. The first is this: North Vietnam won the war, but to a very large degree, the sensibility that infuses the whole nation is the South Vietnamese neo-colonial hospitality vibe. I mean, Vietnam today, in some ways, is just this lush Disneyland for grown-ups. The hospitality, the care, the kindness, the grace is extraordinary. And here's the second thing. At one point when my wife and I are biking, we're on a bike tour, so we have guides and translators. We're chatting with some fishermen by the South China Sea. And because of the cataclysmic damage that we as Americans inflicted on that nation, my wife wondered about whether there was any lingering hostility toward Americans. And these elderly fishermen said to my wife, "We fought the Chinese for our independence for 800 years. We fought the French for 80. We fought you for a decade. You were a footnote on our long path to independence." And I found that really interesting. I mean, when you go visit the Hanoi Hilton, the prison where American airmen were so horrifically tortured, there's a couple of rooms about that. It's sanitized. But most of the Hanoi Hilton is about the way Vietnamese citizens throughout the 20th century were tortured by the French. That was a big part of their history. And for all of the bombs that we dropped, and it was more than we dropped in the Second World War, for all of the chemicals we subjected their children to, for all of the napalm we used on that country, the reality is that they've welcomed us back. They've said, "Thank you for being here. It's 2020. It's not 1968. They've forgiven us.
Chris, as I alluded to before, this book, The Red Lotus, is a perfect pandemic time book on many levels. We do have some Facebook questions, and this one kind of goes right to COVID. Stephanie wants to know, what are your favorite reads during COVID? Have you read more now? And what do you like to read now?
I haven't read more. I've read about the same amount. This is a weird time to read. And so I tend to read two kinds of books. On the one hand, I read the books I would always read, the novels that I just love. And they're often about dread, like Rumen Alman's leave the world behind. I think I'm good at dread. I'm a rank amateur compared to Rumen. Or Tana French's The Searcher. I read a lot of galleys, books that you're going to see in March, such as Lisa Scodlini's absolutely beautiful Eternal. And it's a real departure for Lisa. It's Italy in World War II. And again, it's all about dread. So to compensate for all that dread and foreboding, I fell in love with Jerry Seinfeld's Is This Anything? Because it's about his stand-up monologues going back to his early days in the 1970s to what he's doing now. And I read lots of books for my research, whatever book I'm writing right now. Now, I wasn't reading a lot of books for Hour of the Witch because I'd done most of my research for Hour of the Witch, which comes out April 20th, prior to the pandemic. But I finished my 2022 novel, The Lions of Hollywood. So I was reading a lot about Africa in the 1960s. I was reading a lot about Hollywood in the 1960s. It's really interesting what inspires books. And my 2022 novel, The Lions of Hollywood, I think was inspired by Quentin Tarantino's movie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I want to write a book about movies in the 1960s when I was a little boy and the changes in East Africa. And I was off and running.
I love it because it's very eclectic. I love the whole list. We do have a question. You just mentioned Hour of the Witch, and Susan wanted to know, what was your favorite part about writing Hour of the Witch, and also what you like best about the writing process?
Yeah. Okay, here's something I've never told anyone. I am obsessed with Puritan theology, which sounds really dull, but it isn't, because it's all about one question. Am I saved or damned? And if you're a Puritan, damned is a real thing because hell is as real as heaven. And the Puritans, and this is the other great thing about them, as much as they thought about the next world, they were constantly wondering about this world. And when you read Anne Bradstreet's poetry, you can see how passionate they were. Anne Bradstreet's poems, love poems, Your Husband, are so beautiful. So when I was writing Hour of the Witch, I loved being inside Mary Deerfield's head. The book is a thriller. First of all, is she going to succeed in her divorce? Or is she going to fail and be hanged as a witch? So I just utterly loved being inside her head. And I want to tell you one final footnote about Mary Deerfield and divorce, because this is just a fascinating footnote to the book. When we think of the Puritans, we think they were so uptight, but they expected normal conjugal relations. And one of the reasons why a woman could sue her husband for divorce was impotence.
And we can leave it at that. I want to go back to the Red Lotus for a moment because, as I said, you never write the same book twice. But one thing that I can find as a thread in your books are the women, the really strong female characters. And Alexis, who is an ER doctor, fits that bill. She is a strong woman. I think this whole pandemic period has given us such a new appreciation for doctors. Did you spend any time researching what they do, especially the ER docs, or did you talk to them? Did you spend time in hospitals?
I love ER doctors. I fell in love with ER doctors even before the pandemic. But yes, during the pandemic, ER doctors, nurses, all our frontline healthcare workers are rock stars. But yes, ER doctors are amazing, and I interviewed a ton for this book. And what makes ER doctors so interesting are a variety of things. First of all, unbelievable multitaskers. They've got 8 cubicles going, filled with patients presenting different symptoms, and they're juggling it all. Secondly, they are so empathetic. They always see us at our worst. They always see us when we never expect to be there. No one has on their calendar Friday, 10 a.m. emergency room. So when they see us, we might be in our pajamas. Our breath is toxic. We might have a baby in our arms with a diaper that smells like a Fort Lauderdale dumpster in August. And they're kind. And finally, they've got an amazing sense of humor. You ask an ER doctor, what is the strangest thing you've ever seen? And instantly, they will show you a photograph on their cell phone of the toddler who survived 11 Legos, or the human being who has an object in an orifice it was never meant to be in. And somehow they got it out at 2 a.m. They're just amazing. They're lovely, extraordinary, heroic people. One other ER, this is just amazing. One of the ER doctors I interviewed happened to be in a mass shooting. She was unhurt. And she helped perform the triage at the scene and then went to the hospital to continue to help. That's everyday heroism at a new level.
And thank you for putting her in the book. She's not your only fabulous female character. And I'm going to talk just for a second about Cassie Bowden, who was the last time I saw you, we were talking about The Flight Attendant. And now The Flight Attendant is an HBO miniseries. So number one, congratulations on that. And secondly, how does it feel when you see your character on the screen?
It feels great. It is just such an uplift, especially when it's a brilliant actor. And Kaylee Cuoco is a brilliant actor. She's also a brilliant human being, one of the smartest people I know. But when we were first connecting about Cassie Bowden, it was so clear how Kaylee got her. She understood Cassie Bowden's childhood scars, her childhood pain. I mean, every moment that Kaylee is on screen in The Flight Attendant, she is Cassie. She walks the tightrope between heartbreak and hilarity with such talent. I mean, I love the whole cast and crew. Zasha Mamet as Ani Murati and her Armenian lawyer. Mikhail Huisman is her love interest who, not a spoiler alert, dies in the first 8 minutes. It's just, but then lives in her head. Steve Yockey, the showrunner who reimagined it for television. My God, I love these people so much, and I'm so excited there's going to be a season 2.
I know that surprised me, and I was very happy to see that. We only have a teeny bit of time left, but Lynn has asked a question, and I'm not sure how you're going to answer it, but her question is, in the Red Lotus, do we assume the plague will get out?
I'm not going to reveal that answer because it would be a spoiler, but I will tell you this. I have heard from so many hundreds of readers in the last year who said the epilogue gave them chills. And whenever somebody tells me that the end of a book gives them chills, I think to myself, My work here is done.
I agree. And you did that very well answering that question. I wasn't sure how you were going to get around that, but the epilogue did the same for me too. And as I said, I've started reading it in the beginning of COVID and the lockdown. So it did that for me. Chris, I got to tell everyone the Red Lotus is going to keep you guessing until the very end. And Hour of the Witch might take place in the 1600s, but boy, it is definitely relevant today. These are two great novels from Chris Bohjalian. Chris, thank you so much for spending time with us today.
And I thank you so much. I love getting to chat with you. I had the best time in person. I have a wonderful time virtually. I hope the next time we talk, again, it's in person. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you, Chris. I'm Ann Bocock. Please connect with us and join me on the next Between the Covers.